ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2025. I hope everyone had a good holiday season. I know I certainly did. I mean, after all, it's not every day you get to give your son his very first Christmas. You know what I mean? It's kind of something you really want to celebrate. It was a good time. Anyway, today we're talking about a 2017 anime movie based on a 2007 novel, both called Genocidal Organ, which, yeah, is some serious tonal whiplash coming off Baby's First Christmas. So, okay, I guess some quick context is in order here. I was thinking of what to do for the first video of the year, a couple of weeks ago, going over some ideas, and honestly having a bit of a hard time deciding what to cover. I've already starting to develop a backlog of stuff that I haven't touched yet that I've been meaning to get to and stuff like that. And so I'm thinking I'm going to be doing one of those, right? And then one day, out of nowhere, I see this clip pop up in a completely random post I just came across.
Jaeger 1, touchdown.
Yeah, that caught my interest. So I found out what it's from. I watched the whole thing. I actually started reading the book it was based on. I managed to get an ebook version of it. And suddenly knew that I was what I was going to be talking about today, that's for sure. So the book, as I said, was written in 2007. The first novel by the late Satoshi Itoh, aka Project Itoh, a Japanese sci-fi author of, actually very good repute. He's, had a pretty good following. Sadly passed away in 2009 after a very long battle with cancer. He fought that shit hard and then eventually lost. It's sad to say. He also written numerous short stories as well as several other novels. There was a Harmony, a kind of medical dystopia, which fitting considering. The posthumously completed Empire of Corpses. Both of these got anime adaptations, by the way, along the same time as this one. And also the official novelization of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. In fact, he was actually very good friends with Hideo Kojima since going back to the original Metal Gear. I think he'd gotten his start writing fanfic for Snatcher and Police Knots, of all things. To the point where Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is actually dedicated to him in the end credits. So, yeah, those two are pretty tight. He actually mentioned him in a biography memoir that Kojima wrote, so there was an entire section on him. And I think that Metal Gear connection is something that stood out to me after watching this, and not just to me, other people have mentioned this too, because there's a lot of similar DNA between Genocidal Organ and the Metal Gear series, enough that if you're already a fan of those, I can easily recommend you watch this. So the basic synopsis goes something like this. In the near future, the city of Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia-Herzegovina, is destroyed in a terrorist attack with a homemade nuke, just wiped out. This ends up cranking up the whole post-9/11 paranoia up to 1100. The various Western democracies have pretty much become total surveillance states in response to trying to crack down on terrorism, much sadly to the public acclaim, because, nobody wants another Sarajevo to happen. And meanwhile, there's been a massive uptick in genocidal civil wars among developing countries all over the world. Our main character is Captain Clavis Shepard. He's a U.S. Special Forces officer and a member of an elite assassination squad, completely hush-hush, off the books kind of thing, who's sent out to locate and eliminate a man named John Paul, who seems to somehow be at the center of all these genocides. He's a linguist and a kind of PR person working for various governments, but wherever he goes, within a few months, mass death just follows like clockwork. Mass graves, butchery of all kinds, it's just ethnic cleansings, you name it. So we follow Clavis as he tracks this guy down, during that meeting a woman named Lucia, who's connected to him along the way, as well as various other shady characters, and eventually comes to realize just how John Paul is doing what he's doing. Through his research, he's discovered the linguistic precursors of civil unrest, what he ends up calling the grammar of genocide, rather fittingly. It's the kind of talking points, speech patterns, memes that appear in a society before things get horrifically fucked, and he's figured out not only how to detect those, but how to reverse engineer and introduce those same precursors into societies to cause them to just tear themselves apart. Language as a weapon of mass destruction. If any of you have played the Phantom Pain, you're familiar with the concept, although in this case, no weird parasites are required. I mean, Now, why he's doing this, I'll let you discover if and when you watch the movie or read the book, which you fucking should, frankly. I rarely cover things I don't recommend. But let's just say this is not the kind of story that you should expect to end with kittens and unicorns, if you know what I mean. This shit gets really dark here. Still, I gotta say, this is the kind of anime that I like. Grim dark notwithstanding. There's little to no melodrama, no annoying characters with weird haircuts. It's just serious, hard SF story with some great action scenes and some cool concepts being explored, which, as I said previously, if you're a Metal Gear fan, some of this is definitely going to interest you. For example, part of what makes Clavs' kill team so effective in the field is that they've been enhanced with what's called Battle Emotion Adaptive Regulation, or BEAR. It's a combination of nanomachines, take a drink, and pre-mission tactical counseling, which basically just means, the psychologists are trying to get them okay with doing horrible things instead of having them be okay with horrible things they've done, to end result being to suppress their emotions and pain responses in combat. Basically, it's the SOP system from MGS4, and like that system, when it screws up, it ain't pretty. Okay, some bad stuff happens then. But when it does work, you end up with soldiers who don't react to pain, can fight with blown off limbs, and don't feel the slightest guilt at gunning down anyone who gets in the way of their objective. Anyone. Yeah. Remember that badass scene that got me interested in Genocidal Organ in the first place? That thing I showed you? That bit happens near the midpoint during a mission in India, and most of those people getting shredded are child soldiers, drugged up to the eyeballs and sent to the slaughter by the warlords that conscripted them. Yeah. I did say it was going to get dark, right? Yeah. A major theme of the story is detachment from death and violence in general, on a personal societal level, and what that detachment can lead to. I mean, whether it's through drugs or advanced technology like Clavs and the Soldiers, something primal like what John Paul's doing with the right words triggering deep structures in your brain, or frankly just being too comfortable and not wanting to see or know about the horrible things happening elsewhere, just out of sight. I mean, think of in what context you've heard the phrase, "I was just following orders." Think of what effect that has had, those little words have had on people's conscience and sense of right and wrong throughout the ages. Suddenly it isn't really all that far-fetched, right? The idea of terrible things being done because of ideas and beliefs that someone may not even really understand how they got into their head. I mean, here it's just being taken that one science fictional step further, in order to explore the idea. And speaking of one sci-fi step further, the rest of the technology on display in Genocidal Organ is also really interesting. You've got all the state-of-the-art tactical gear that the soldiers are using, like targeting, heads-up display contact lenses, which leads to some cool POV shots during firefights. That's pretty nice. You got adaptive camo that lets them blend in the surroundings. The intruder drop pods that they use for insertion into their missions drop from this huge flying wing type aircraft that can also drop bombs and carries helicopters and everything. It's pretty impressive. There's all the stuff we see in the civilian world as well, especially in the the more advanced first world Western civilization places, where you have the constant surveillance systems always watching, the augmented reality that people use in their day to day. I mean, you pay everything with your biometrics, your thumbprints and stuff. At least, in Western societies. In other parts of the world, they actually use, there's some places where they actually use paper money just as more like a rebellious punk rock kind of thing at that point. This is a world where Big Brother is always watching, but most people don't seem to mind and just go along with it without any care at all. Just, happy to avoid another artificial sun opening up on their cities like it did Sarajevo. And finally, the other big thing is the integration of biological and biomechanical systems into things like robotics, those aforementioned drop pods. Even passenger planes now have these kind of weird musculatures to them in certain ways. To bring it back to the Metal Gear for a second, the Gecko in MGS4 also had organic components, that cloned ungulate tissue for them, so basically, cow legs. In the case here, it's engineered dolphin and whale muscles. So, not only does it give things a unique look, it also makes things just a little bit more unnerving than if they'd gone with straight tech. So it's a nice little touch. I enjoy this in these kinds of near future alt history kind of things. But speaking of the look, I should probably talk about the production values a little bit instead of just going on about that stuff. The anime itself was directed by Shuko Murase. This is the same guy who directed Ergo Proxy, for those who enjoyed that particular bit of cyberpunk there. And for the mech fans, Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. And this one's got a kind of similar vibe in terms of like character designs and animation. It's all very clean, very, well done. Especially I like the kind of atmosphere within certain scenes with those moonlight and stuff like that. It really works well. This isn't really surprising, I think, since Murase, he also did the movie's character. He's also the movie's character designer, as well as what else he did? Key animator. He was the storyboard artist and screenplay writer. Yeah, this guy kept himself busy on this one. And, well, possibly because the production company went bankrupt while they were making it. So, frankly, we're lucky this thing's actually released. It actually turned out pretty damn good. I mean, there's a couple of places where the art animation isn't quite even in certain places, but overall, the visuals and atmosphere are really good. They really help keep things grounded and believable. There's nothing, too over the top in the depictions of things. I mean, regardless whether you're in someone's apartment or Klaus's apartment waiting for a mission, or he's out in the streets of Prague, or in the middle of a firefight in some, godforsaken hellhole, everything feels, it has that sense of verisimilitude to it, even if something unusual or just goddamn horrible is happening. And it really does help with that kind of impressions. If I have any real criticism, I'd say it's mostly from having, begun to read the novel itself. I can tell there's stuff that's been cut to get that 2-hour runtime that I wish was still in there, because specifically the novel is entirely from Clavis Shepard's perspective. And it really gets you into his headspace, a soldier who's psychologically detached by both technology and his own personal traumas from all the carnage he wades through on his day job, and how that relates to the overall theme of the story. I mean, this guy has been through some shit even before he was in the military, but now, every time he goes on a mission, he feels nothing about it. He's even aware of it. He's conscious of the fact that the emotions and feelings, the combination of relief and guilt that comes from just surviving a firefight and gunning down whoever's shooting at you, it's not there. There's a chunk of the human experience that has just been cut out of his brain in order to make him more effective at his job, and that is something that comes back to haunt him multiple times during the story, at least in this version. There's actually a 3-volume manga adaptation that does cover some of this. Like, he has these dreams of being led among the dead, both the people he's killed and the people he's known who have died, and all these corpses around him by his own deceased mother, who he had to he decided to cut life support after she got into a coma and just no chance of getting out of it. And she's just leading him there, and he discovers that he's dead as well, and it's just like, not threatening in a way, it's just, imagine being surrounded by crowds of corpses and knowing that this is the world that you live in. I mean, yeah, he's got some issues. And yeah, I definitely think that the story would have been even richer with just a few episodes worth of space versus just the one movie. Really, have time to get into this stuff. Bring in a bit more of that psychological aspect for our main character. Then again, I mean, given the issues that they had making just the one movie, I doubt that would have necessarily worked out. I mean, it could also, because imagine, they get through an episode, 2 episodes, and then the production company goes kaput. They probably wouldn't have had the budget to, to restart again. If with a new one, you just keep going, we'd ended up with, just an incomplete series at that point. So, sometimes you just gotta be happy with what you got, right? Also, I can also see some people disliking how talky some parts are. There's where the characters go over linguistic theory, philosophize about freedom or the nature of man and stuff like that. There's a bit as I said, in Prague, where there's a bit more of an investigative kind of, spy stuff happening rather than, full-on special forces shootouts. But then again, Metal Gear, you should all be used to that kind of shit by now. I mean, the cutscenes in this are way shorter, let me tell you that much. That actually does bring me to something that I do enjoy about Genocidal Organ more than the Metal Gear games, which I do like, don't get me wrong, and I like them quite a bit actually. In those, there's a lot of great, well-researched and conceptualized ideas about, speculative technology, history, politics, philosophy, the particular stats on a Colt 45 that Snake managed to get his hands on, the drill. All that good stuff, but they often get buried under all the craziness of flamenco dancing vampires, or a man covered in bees, all that insane shit, and an increasingly convoluted plot that needs to be untangled. This was one of the main problems with MGS4, for that matter, not. But here we've got those similar themes and concepts, but without all that extra stuff weighing it down. It makes it very enjoyable, just from my perspective, and I'm certain much more approachable for a lot of you out there. That's for sure. Plus, it's the closest thing we're likely to get to a Metal Gear anime, so if that appeals to you, and you like your near future sci-fi on the grim and gritty side, if you enjoyed a lot of the Ghost in the Shell kind of animes, you probably enjoy this as well. I'd recommend checking, if you like those kinds of things, I'd recommend checking out Genocidal Organ for certain, both the anime and the novel. I haven't checked out the manga adaptation very much. I haven't seen much of it in English, so don't take my word on that one. But for those first two, yeah, definitely I'd recommend taking a look. On that note, I have been Zero Sum. Thank you for watching, and next time I'm going to try to find something lighter to talk about. Maybe something a little bit less on the war crimey side. Just to start 2025 a little bit better. Anyways, see you then.